Welcome, everybody.
Okay. Hello, all. Thanks for joining us today at the Traffic 21 Mobility 21 Deployment Partner Consortium. It's a pleasure to have you all here. I am Raj Kumar, Director of the Mobility 21 National University Transportation Center on Mobility. Along with me are Stan Calwell, Executive Director of Mobility 21, Professor Chris Hendrickson, Director of Traffic 21 Institute, Lisa K. Schweier, she's the Program Manager at Mobility 21 and Traffic 21, and Joy Mann, Executive Assistant for Traffic 21 and Mobility 21. I hope, given the turbulent times that we've been living in, that you and yours are all safe and healthy. That is one good news. The year 2020 is rapidly coming to an end. Hopefully, we'll have better times ahead. I'm also pleased to report that we have had a fairly active year, if you will. Let me try to summarize what happened over the past year, give you an update, and we'll have a follow-on discussion with panels that will be led by Stan and later on by Lisa K. So the first panel will be on transportation and equity, how to address systemic challenges. We have put together a very distinguished panel, followed by panel number 2 on the impact of COVID-19 on mobility. And again, very highly respected set of panelists on that forum as well. We will adjourn at 2:30 p.m. So that's the current plan. We will have a break in between the two panels as well. Lisa K, next slide, please. So who are we? We are Mobility 21, one of 7 U.S. Department of Transportation National University Transportation Centers, which is a part of the UTC program, University Transportation Center program, about an $85 million a year program. There are multiple categories of centers. So there are only 7 national centers, and 2 of those 7 are on mobility, the newest mission of the US DOT, introduced about 3 years back. Our partners in crime, so to speak, are University of Pennsylvania, the Ohio State University in Columbus, and the Community College of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, right? With CMU leading the team. Our mission is to conduct research, development, and deployment on innovative technologies, policies, and partnerships for the safe and efficient movement of people and goods. Each of those lines is fairly significant. Our working mantra, our motto for the past 11 years has been research, development, and deployment, which we abbreviate as R&D and D, looking to innovate technologies, impact public policies, and then craft, put in place very strong relationships to make a change in the real world. And our specific goal is to move people and goods both safely and efficiently. So that's our mission. Next slide. We actually have an advisory council with multiple luminary members. You see them on the slide. The newest member of the advisory council is Secretary Yasmin Gramian, who became the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, PennDOT in short, relatively recently. So we welcome her to the advisory council. Turns out that we actually met with the advisory council yesterday, received excellent and constructive feedback. So many of them will be online today and tomorrow. So we thank them for their inputs and then thank them for their participation. You can touch base with them as need be. So today is when we celebrate our relationships and partnerships with the Deployment Partner Consortium. We have upwards of 275 members. This consortium specifically is meant for identifying real world needs in the domain of transportation, conduct the research to meet the project goals, and most importantly, deploy that in the real world. We also look at creating spin-offs, licensing the technology. We will talk about that later. We actually offer opportunities for recruiting graduates from our programs for both for jobs and internships. And you will also have an opportunity to participate in class projects and capstone projects as part of the academic curriculum. You get exposed to the students, and therefore you can hire the best and the brightest from CMU, UPenn, the Ohio State University, and the Community College of Allegheny County. So the list of deployment partners keeps growing. One highlight just this past year was that we celebrated 10 years of focusing on transportation-related issues at Carnegie Mellon. The Traffic 21 Institute was started in 2009. So we celebrated the 10th anniversary last year at about the same time, where we actually launched a new challenge, a new vision that we set for ourselves in terms of innovating mobility for all. Lately, after the COVID pandemic started, there's been a lot of emphasis on equity. Turns out that we had been looking at this, I guess, even before the pandemic had launched itself. As part of the celebrations, we were proud to basically have Secretary Elaine Shaw be the keynote speaker, hosted by the president of CMU, Dr. Farnam Jahanian. And we also had the former Secretary of the US DOT, Mr. Anthony Fox, speak at the event as well, along with many other luminaries. So we are very pleased and glad to actually have had them participate in our celebrations. Next slide. For the next several minutes, I will give you a quick highlights of activities from the past year on multiple fronts. We'll focus on research activities. We'll continue on with education activities. We'll discuss some technology transfer progress that has been made, how we disseminate information to the larger community, both domestic and international. And we'll talk about some of the recognition that our colleagues and students in Traffic 21, Mobility 21 have received. You see a picture on the left, a picture from University of Pennsylvania. Next slide. So let's jump to the research activities. We actually have had, continue to have more than 50 research projects. So instead of boring you with all the 50 projects, let's just categorize the clusters of these projects into 6 distinct focus areas. The first is directly in alignment with our UTC mission of moving people and goods. So that's the first cluster of projects. The second is about connected and automated vehicles. We'll talk a little bit about that later as well. Thirdly, we look at how do we keep vulnerable road users, the elderly trying to cross a road, for example, children who may not be paying attention. That's the third cluster of projects. The fourth focus area is how do we assist the disadvantaged, for example, people in wheelchairs are being supported by a cane. How do we basically let them cross the streets safely and then promptly as well? The fifth element, which we expect will be a focus area for the incoming administration in Washington, D.C., is about how do we make the infrastructure that transportation operates in, make it smarter. And last but not the least, even though many out there view CMU probably has as a technology-oriented research institution along with UPenn and OSU, it turns out that we have a school focusing on public policy, the Heinz School of Public Policy and Information Systems. So we actually play an active role in trying to inform and impact public policy and how the regulatory regime operates. So those are the 6 focus areas that we have. Next slide. So our research projects, I already mentioned we have more than 50 active research projects. We go through a call for proposals in late calendar year, in this case, November 2019. In this case, this particular year, we had received 24 proposals, which were requesting upwards of a total of $2.2 million in budget, more than what we could support. We actually solicited reviews from our members of our advisory council, the UTC management team that I introduced earlier. It turned out that we were able to select 16 of those 24 projects, a pretty good ratio, if I might add. and those projects will be launched come July of 2020, and will likely last for a year. So each project basically is a year. And we structure the schedule such that students coming through the application process can be chosen because the funding decisions have already been notified. And then as soon as students come in, the project can be launched because the award is in place. Next slide. This year, we were glad to actually introduce a new way of doing new projects. We released a solicitation for what we call What's the Big Idea projects. These projects are ones that demonstrate significant promise and impact on mobility, and how do we transform how we move around using literally big groundbreaking ideas. A core requirement was that the proposing team must be multidisciplinary, multiple faculty members, an 18-month schedule, and a much bigger budget than the ones that we normally support on a year-to-year basis, the 50 project that I mentioned earlier. The proposals were due in October 2020. We did select 3 projects to be funded. They are going through the formalities of the information that they need to submit. So we will announce the 3 projects very shortly, but the projects have been picked. Third category is what we call the Smart Mobility Challenge. This is the third time in 3 years that we are actually doing this. This is a special category of research activities where we call upon our neighboring municipalities and public transit operators in Southwestern PA. We are based in Pittsburgh in Southwestern PA, and we actually contact our local neighborhoods, if you will, and try to understand what real problems that they actually have on the roads and how we can assist them with respect to coming up with ideas and deploying them. We were very glad to have the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission partner with us as a challenge partner. They are a regional MPO, and they've been helping to convey this solicitation, if you will, to regional communities. And this is the third year that we are doing that. So again, to summarize, we had our normal cluster of projects, annual research projects conducted by faculty members across all colleges at Carnegie Mellon. A second category is the Big Idea project that we launched just this year. And the third is the Smart Mobility Challenge. Next slide. To give a quick update on what's happening at University of Pennsylvania, they're been our partner in transportation for the past 9 years or so, led by Professor Rahul Mangaram at UPenn. He can cite basically literally 3 or 4 slides worth of achievements. A few of those highlights are seen on the slide. Supporting Professor Rahul Mangaram at UPenn are Professor Eric Guerra, Professor Megan Ryerson, and Professor Helen Loeb. Turns out that Professor Rahul Mangaram, to just highlight one element, has been running a set of annual competitions based on autonomous cars, scale autonomous cars called F110. Think of the F1 automotive racing, 1/10 to scale of that, except that there are no people controlling these cars. The vehicles drive themselves autonomously, and he has been successfully been able to conduct those competitions even in the COVID era, except that instead of having the races be physical in nature, they're being held in a virtual domain as well. So Rahul, thank you, and to your team for the great progress that you've been making across multiple dimensions. Next slide, just a few highlights from Ohio State as well, led by Professor Umit Osguner. His name is mentioned there. Just a few highlights, if you will. They've been very active. Professor Umit has been active in the domain of intelligent vehicles for a few decades now. So I have a lot of respect for his track record and his accomplishments. They received a visit from the U.S. General Accounting Office, looking at the effect of pedestrian and crowds on vehicle motion and traffic throughput. We at CMA received this visit from the General Accounting Office last year in 2019 to discuss autonomous vehicles. So we get a constant stream of visitors from different agencies at the federal level. Next item, very glad to announce that OSU received $1.9 million from the US DOT to look at problems with GPS, where GPS can be attacked and then even spoofed, if you will. So they're looking at how to resolve those technical issues, core technical issues that we have all come to depend on with GPS. And meanwhile, OSU will be holding a workshop at the end of the month, November 30th. I believe we can actually still register and participate in that webinar. This workshop will focus on how autonomous vehicles can actually detect and handle pedestrians safely, right? Safety for both the pedestrians and the occupants of the autonomous vehicles. So pedestrians on the roadways, the title of the workshop, you can Google that very quickly. You'll find the link. Please register. They already have a ton of participants. So that gives you kind of a summary of highlights on our research. On the education side, a bunch of activities have been going on too. We are pleased to announce that there will be a new executive education certificate program. The first event, the inaugural edition of this program, will be on the week of the May 3rd, May 3 to 7 in 2021. This will be a virtual event, week long, and will be presented through the Heinz College of Public Policy and Information Systems that I mentioned before. So if you, your colleagues, or your acquaintances will be interested in actually learning more about the cutting edge of what's happening with the transportation, it could be from the people could be from the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector, and then both the domestic and international attendees are welcome. So that's a program being launched. So the program is being put in place, will start in May. Next. Highlighting a couple of students who have been declared as our Robotics Institute Summer Scholars. Robotics Institute is part of CMU, I believe the largest cluster of robotic research across the planet in academia. So you see Beverly Claire and Fausto Vega. They've been mentored by two UTC faculty, Professor Ding Zhao and Dr. Sebastian Scherer. Next slide. Let me highlight Carly Bernhardt Cookula, who was our Women in Transportation Fellow as part of the Robot WITS program. And she's so excited. She's actually staying on for an extra semester. And she helps us to partner with schools and other organizations to stimulate and encourage excitement for students to get into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. She's been presenting at a couple of TRIO conferences. So this highlights, this slide and the previous slide highlights our emphasis of actually bringing in women into the transportation domain, into technology and policy related areas. Next. We are very grateful to PennDOT. Secretary Yasmin Gramian has been a strong partner, a great partner PennDOT has been for over the years. And the secretary actually hosted a team of our students from CMU who had conducted a fairly comprehensive policy study on mobility, accessibility, and connectivity, and how rural transportation equity in Pennsylvania can be accomplished. So we thank Secretary Gramian for hosting the students. Next. Our able partner of the Mobility21 team, Community College of Allegheny County, is the mechanism through which we try to educate the workforce out there so they can actually come up to speed as technologies change rapidly within a car. I guess we think of cars basically as transportation modes, but cars are literally computers on wheels. Each vehicle actually has several tens of computers, if you will. So really high technology packaged in a consumer-friendly enclosure. So they actually have introduced an experimental course this year with 12 students looking at innovations in transportation, and their newest automotive program has educated more than 250 automotive students on the latest and greatest safety technologies in the automotive domain. They're referred to as ADAS, Advanced Driver Assist Systems. And then they have actually graduated 31 students with associate degrees. So we thank Allegheny, the Community College of Allegheny County. I believe Jeff is on the line. Moving on to the next frontier of technology transfer, we believe that research is only valuable when it actually gets transferred to real practice. So here are a couple of new spin-off entities that have happened from CMU. One called Traffic Cure and Flux Technologies. Traffic Cure is still in sort of in stealth mode. You'll get more information in the next few months. Flux Technologies looks at sensing the environment in a three-dimensional way, if you will. So we are pleased to see these two new spin-offs. Next slide. With the context that we have actually had 3 commercial spin-offs in the recent past, all of them have been very successful. Robotics, looking at how we can efficiently maintain our roadways and save money at the same time. Rapid Flow, making traffic throughput much smoother by making traffic lights much smarter. Automatica was a spin-off that commercialized the leading technology that had been developed at CME for a long time, and that was bought out by Delphi, which subsequently became Aptiv. The last entity there, Metro Lab, is really not a commercial spin-off, but a 501c3 nonprofit spin-off, if you will. It's right now based in Washington, D.C., with its own administration, has 40 plus cities across the country as members, with 50 plus universities as members as well. And they've been conducting more than 100 projects where the objective is to take the best ideas from across the country, and then cities teaming up with the university in its locale, and then trying to actually transition them into practice, if you will. So all the cities, if you will, listen to success stories from other cities, understand what works, what does not work, and then adopt the things that do work. Next slide. A few highlights from the pilot deployments that we have had. Professor Rahul Mangaram at UPenn has been working with the Society for Automotive Engineers, a highly regarded nonprofit in the domain. I mentioned the F110th competition that Professor Mangaram runs, but he also teaches a course based on that. It turns out that a broader course based on that, Professor Rahul Mangaram's course, will now be offered by the Society for Automotive Engineers. Recently, we are pleased to have been running a project which delivers food to families in need during the pandemic, utilizing school bus routes. When schools were shut down thanks to the pandemic, students who used to get their lunch, maybe their breakfast at school, could no longer get food, if you will. So we've been actually trying to deliver food to these needy children and families at an hour of need, if you will. So we are very proud to have been part of that. We have 2 Smart Mobility Challenge projects that are also developing real-world practices that can be adopted by other municipalities and townships. One from Moon Township, close to Pittsburgh, and the other from North Huntingdon Township. Next. In terms of disseminating the experience, the knowledge that we've been accumulating over the years, and we want to do that internationally as well. Stan Caldwell, the executive director of Traffic 21 Mobility 21, releases the Smart Transportation Dispatch once a week, and a Traffic 21 newsletter about every 2 weeks or so. If you are not subscribed to either of these transportation letters, we strongly encourage you to do so. If you go to mobility21.cmu.edu or traffic21.cmu.edu, you'll actually have an opportunity to actually sign up. We right now have 4,000 recipients in the public sector, the private sector, the academic sector, as well as the nonprofit sector. It's basically it's an accumulation of lots of events happening in the domain across the world, and specific events that may be related to the UTC. We have been conducting national summits in Washington, D.C. for the past several years. We started in 2015, even when we were a National University Transportation Center on Safety. We became a mobility center about 4 years back. We have been continuing that tradition where we bring together representatives from transportation agencies, research agencies in and around Washington, D.C. We bring in multiple other university transportation centers from around the country, focusing on mobility in our current case, if you will. And we also bring in representatives from the public sector and the nonprofit sector to basically have a national discussion on what the needs are, what the recent developments are, and what the future priorities ought to be. The next National Mobility Summit will be in April 2021, April the 15th. Thanks to the pandemic, this event will be virtual in nature. And we plan to actually even expand the participation to a larger contingent of attendees. Next. So the format will be updated. We'll be identifying new priorities. Two suggestions, if you will, to the audience listening to this discussion. Please try to participate being virtual. There's no travel expenses or overhead. So you can participate, listen to us. All participations by invitation only. And if you do think that your agency needs to participate or other agencies need to be part of this national dialogue, given that there's a transition going on in DC, there'll be an opportunity to basically think anew, launch new initiatives and such. So we think it's a good time to basically launch some new paths, if you will. Next slide. We also conduct a series of seminars on campus, both for faculty members at CMU, University of Pennsylvania, and Ohio State University. We have had CCAC present as well. So each seminar features a faculty member in an hour-long session, where half the time is really for networking and Q&A and discussions, if you will. And we also actually highlight them on the USDOT websites, webinar website. So we try to disseminate information very broadly. Next. I guess as the director of Mobility21, my pleasure to, I guess, appreciate many of the awards that our faculty members and students have been receiving. Professor Costa Samaras from Civil Engineering at CMU received a prestigious award. Next. A student from University of Pennsylvania working with Professor Mangaram got an award at a conference. Our own Professor Chris Hendrickson, who directs the Traffic 21 Institute, received a very prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award at CUTSI this past year. He also was the recipient of the 2020 Richard Torrance Award, if you will. You see the recognition quote there. And then meanwhile, PennDOT has been a leader in the autonomous vehicle space, received the biggest grant from a USDOT program of $8.4 million. PennDOT leads this 9-member team, of which CMU is glad to be a partner as well. Next. Professor Yankai, who actually joined the Mobility21 family only about 2 years back. He won an award on the project that he's been working on with us with haptic interfaces. Next. A student in our Language Technologies Institute, as I mentioned before, our researchers actually span pretty much all colleges within CMU across 7 different colleges. So congratulations to Legion U. Another student, Rick Gran, just this past week actually won Best in Session Award for a poster he presented. CMU Professor Burju Akinci, she has been a long-standing member of our extended family. She won this highly distinguished award from the American Society for Civil Engineers. It's called the ASC 2020 Computing Civil Engineering Award. And the other plaque that you see there is another award received by students of Professor Rahul Mangaram at UPenn. So this is just a sampling of many awards. I could actually keep going. In the interest of time, we'll just move forward. So that is a very quick summary of the highlights this past year. I'm again to summarize, despite the pandemic, we have been lucky to actually keep the intensity of our activities going on, and hopefully you got a sense for progress is being made on multiple frontiers. So let me highlight a couple of things in closing. Number one, clearly the pandemic upended society as we know it on the corporate front, on the governance front, and so on. So therefore, we need to be cognizant of how fundamental some new event can be. That could be a future pandemic, for example. So we need to rethink how we do things, number one. Number two, over this past year, I think we were made increasingly aware of the long-standing racial injustices, inequities in society. So we therefore we need to be addressing the broader questions of equity for all in transportation beyond. Transportation being our core mission in this domain, we will be re-emphasizing, strengthening our emphasis, focus on providing mobility for all. Right? So that's the second comment. So with those two broad themes, you are our trusted and valued deployment partners. We would love to continue, I guess, if you share our mindset or you think we should be thinking about other things, please touch base with any one of us, myself, Rajkumar, Stan Caldwell, Lisa K. Schweier, Professor Chris Hendrickson. We'll be happy to basically have a conversation with you. We have resources to spend. We have some of the best and brightest minds across 4 institutions in Pennsylvania and Ohio. And we have an excellent cadre of students, both at the graduate level and at the undergraduate level. So we can, once we understand the problems that you think need to be solved, we would love to understand your problems, bring to bear these resources, and hopefully we can make a positive change in the world around us. So let me thank you for your patience. I'm going to pass the baton to my colleague, Stan Caldwell. Stan?
Thank you, Raj, and appreciate everyone's participation in this session. We have about 10 minutes before our beginning session. Lisa K., are we ready? Do you want to begin early?
I'm not sure everybody's on the line yet, so I think what we can do is if anyone has any general questions for Raj or you or I about the presentation, we'd be happy to answer those. We also have a link in the chat box that if there are ideas and comments as we're going through the session today, that you can go to our idea board and add those as well. So let's see if we have any questions at this point.
Okay.
No, yeah, I'll put that special music back on.
And we took a, we took the liberty in this session, rather than having even though we had a lot of registrants for this conference, we wanted to have a lot of interaction with this meeting, because that was always historically the purpose of the Deployment Partner Consortium, was to be able to have interaction among the researchers and the deployment partners, but also among the deployment partners themselves. So 2 things. One is you have the chat function where you can put your ideas in, but we also allowed you to still privately chat with each other. So as you kind of scroll through the attendees here, you'll see a lot of your colleagues from the past and maybe new folks that you would like to introduce to. We've allowed you to privately chat as well. So please take advantage of that. And then also, we wanted to also give you the ability to ask questions during sessions like this. So please feel free to unmute your microphone, which you can do on your own, and ask a question now while we have some time.
So I do see a question about whether there are links to the programs that we had mentioned, such as the various women in robotics and engineering or the food delivery along the school bus route. So Evan, it looks like you asked that question. Our website is just an amazing resource of information and links. So I will put that link into the chat box. And there is a news button on there that you can go in and type in any keywords, and it will pull up information from within the site as well as from postings that we've made. So I will put that up for you in a minute. And we also had a question from Chris for Raj about what are the near-term plans for the new Cadillac AV?
Good question. It's literally a brand new public statement that we're making here. It's not been stated in public before. All I would say is that stay tuned over the next couple of months or less. We will try to do a public demo of sorts that you will get exposed to the technologies that have been built into the AV. So please stay tuned. For the next couple of months, you'll hear a lot more.
Thanks, Raj. We're looking forward to that news coming up. Another piece of news that we've implemented through the Deployment Partner Consortium to take advantage of our new vision on equity was that we've been, from the beginning of Traffic 21, we've always linked our researchers with a deployment partner, whether that's been a company or a nonprofit organization or a government agency, in order to both design the research, conduct the research, and deploy the research. But in light of our efforts to try to infuse more equity into the research as well, from the beginning and from the design process, in this next round of grants, we're requiring our faculty not just to have deployment partners, but what we call equity partners. And so we've identified organizations within the Deployment Partner Consortium, and new ones as well, that have a strong mission of equity. And so, again, these can be government agencies or community organizations, but ones that can work with the researchers from the beginning in order to make sure that equity is baked in and co-designed into the research process and part of the deployment process as well. So we encourage you as deployment partners and now as equity partners to be able to look for those opportunities. And if you have ideas or you're willing to work with our faculty in this equity process, we invite your participation in that. And please feel free to reach out to us with specific ideas or just general willingness to be supportive.
Dan, add some color to what Stan just said. Our UTC is being funded by the US DOT to the tune of about $2.8 million per year. So it's not a small sum of money. And it turns out that when you add in the Big Ideas project solicitation I was talking about, we are spending upwards of $3.2, $3.3 million this year in 2020 and 2021, just over a 12-month period. So these are not small sums of money, right? So we do have significant resources where the resources actually go very far because we have students and faculty members from academia running these projects. So the money actually goes much farther than in a corporate domain, for example. But what we like to do is, instead of looking at ivory tower abstract problems, we really want to actually identify real world needs, of which there are many, and then partner with folks like you, and then deploy those resources, monetary and intellectual, and then make a change. So please give this some serious thought and keep in touch with us. Vincent, I think, had a question.
Yes, Raj, thank you very much. Good to see you, by the way. And Stan, to your issue before, in terms of speaking about the equity, and Raj, this is for you too. How does that tie to public transportation? What are you thinking in terms of specific objectives or maybe initiatives in the public transportation realm, since it plays such an important role in the equity issue?
Well, what we're trying to do with the deployment partners is really follow their lead on what those real needs are. And so we've seen, both, we had a good conversation yesterday with our advisory council, and had Paul Skatelis on from APTA and Catherine Kellerman from the Port Authority of Allegheny County. And we're also working with a lot of smaller transit agencies as well. And So we're looking at both policy and technology initiatives because, you know, it's specifically in dealing with COVID and the post-COVID world, there are both technological hurdles to kind of bring back the, you know, public confidence in riding transit safely, and then also policy initiatives that can help. We've been working very closely with Roger Cohen and Secretary Gramian with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, looking at transit among other issues in a post-COVID world. So we're trying to really support both technology and policy initiatives around this, and we welcome any transit agencies that want to partner with us.
Great, thank you for that, because the issues are very often as much governance as anything else. So thank you for having the open field for that.